Hello and welcome. Thanks for joining me for the Holiday Hustle workshop. I'm Dr. Sharmila Logathas, and I'm here today to talk to you about strategies you can use to manage the festive load. So thank you for coming along and choosing to spend your precious time and energy here. And that's really what this workshop is all about, because our time and energy is so precious, especially at this time of year. Okay. And so just a little bit about me. I'm a HCPC registered clinical psychologist who works with individuals and couples. I'm also a mum to two little kids. I've been married to a lovely man for a long time. And like many families, we're a dual income household. And that's really where I became interested in gender inequity, because it's when we had kids and became busier that I struggled to constructively divide the household chores and childcare with my partner. And it wasn't until I discovered the fair play method, a strategy for divvying up that work, that things got easier. And it inspired me to train so that I could teach it to other people. Anyway, enough about me. If you're comfortable to, what I'd really like to hear is very briefly, maybe kind of just a first name and kind of what's brought you here today. So you can either kind of say it on video or if you'd rather type it in the chat, it's up to you.
Do you want me to start? I'll say hi.
Yeah, that'd be great, Sarah.
Well, I'm Sarah. I'm also another psychologist and I work in the cooperative, but I'm here also as I work with lots of couples, and this is a real dilemma that comes up in my work. So it would be really helpful to have some strategies to understand how to be able to support them. And I too have young children, and I'm kind of and I'm working, and the mental load is really real. So
Mhm.
I'm really interested in the fair play method as well. I've learned some of it, my understanding through yourself, but here to learn more and to support you
Great.
as well. I'm going to turn the video on and off only because I'm making a hot drink at the same
Okay,
time.
no problem.
Okay.
Rob, are you there? Or Maven Greg? I've got.
Hi.
Hi.
Sorry, it's like I've turned, I don't know if the video's come on there. Is it coming on? I
Yes.
won't leave it on for the whole recording, but just to say hello. Hi.
Hello.
So sorry, I missed your intro just because we've got three kids we're trying to put to sleep upstairs, and but very keen to join. I mean, we're just basically a jobbing couple
Yeah,
trying to um, manage it all. And this, when I saw it, I thought, wow, this sounds absolutely fantastic, to help us think about how to do it maybe a bit differently.
great. Do you know very much about fair play? Is that kind of what's brought you here, or are you here to learn?
Well, we are both familiar with Fair Play Exists. We even
Hmm.
went as far as buying the cards. But then just the actual getting around to doing it, um, we haven't managed.
Okay, well, this might be a really great way because it's a bit of a fair play light and it's about kind of the Christmas tasks specifically. So it might be a great way to kind of get motivated.
Thank you.
Okay.
Did you want to say anything?
And I don't know if Rob's having some problems with the sound. Oh, he's in the chat. Hang on. Not sure the microphone is working with Zoom. I'm here with my wife, Marianne. We have two young children. I have a job that means I'm expected to work over the Christmas period, though I have a few days off. So definitely interested in how to share things. Thank you, Rob. Okay. All right. So let's move on. The next slide is how do I get the slides on? Right. Okay. So just a quick run through of what we're going to cover today. We're going to start with a brief background to gender inequity, especially around Christmas, and how societal expectations and pressures contribute to that, before starting to think about what we can do about it. So I'll introduce the fair play method for divvying up chores and show you how to apply it to your Christmas to-do list. And then I'll just take a little bit of time at the end to expand on what you've learnt today, to life beyond Christmas and to the future. So hopefully we'll have a little bit of time at the end as well for some questions, but we'll see how we go. Okay, so if you're someone like me who celebrates Christmas either religiously or just in a festive way, chances are you're looking forward to a big feast, presents, and a few festive do's along the way. And if you've got kids, that fun kind of increases to include all the school-related stuff like nativities, Christmas fairs, Christmas jumper day, not to mention juggling all the childcare during the holidays, planning seasonal activities like pantomimes, and keeping the magic alive for those believers in the family. So making sure that Santa turns up and perhaps even that pesky little elf on a shelf as well. And that's if you're only celebrating one holiday. For some of us, there's multiple holidays to straddle, like Thanksgiving or Hanukkah as well. And it's not just the doing, it's the thinking and the planning that goes into making this stuff happen. And the time consuming behind the scenes unpaid work. So that's often called things like the mental load or invisible work or emotional labor. And it's a lot. And behind that a lot is usually someone, which is why at the cooperative this year, we asked the question, who is Santa? And I'm really hoping no kids are watching, or I know like there's a few kids maybe in the background. So you may want to cover their ears or mute this bit because I'm about to shatter their dreams. But here is the big reveal. And here she is. Although she may look a little bit more like this, or even like this, or on a really bad day, like this. So those are just images I pulled off Canva, so they may not look like the person who's Santa in your family. But joking aside, what we do know is that women tend to disproportionately do the unpaid labour throughout the whole year. But it feels like at Christmas, that to-do list gets even longer and even more overwhelming. So what the research shows on the whole is that although there's always exceptions, Christmas is an overwhelmingly powered by women experience or by those who identify as women as well. Especially when they're in heterosexual relationships. Same-sex couples don't seem to struggle so much with dividing up labour. And we can kind of talk about why, but we'll focus on the heterosexual couples in this workshop. And when that responsibility for all of that workload falls unfairly on one person, it quite understandably causes a level of stress, resentment, exhaustion, and rage that can be harmful both to that particular person, their relationships, and yes, even to society more widely. And by society, what I mean is that it's not a coincidence that women are overwhelmingly the people in the workforce who are tasked with all the additional Christmas tasks like decorating offices, planning secret Santas, or the office Christmas do, or that schools expect the mums to be the ones who are running the school Christmas fairs or organising the Christmas hampers. So, and if you're thinking that this doesn't really look like me or my situation, I'm a single parent or I'm in a same-sex relationship, but you still feel like the division of labour in your family is off, bear with me because the strategies I'm going to be talking about later will work for you too. But I just want to focus on this gender gap for a little bit longer. Okay, so here are some Christmas-specific stats. So a recent YouGov study found that being a parent is a risk factor for stress around the holidays. That's understandable given how much your Christmas task list grows when you have kids in the family. But perhaps more telling is that there's a gender gap in that stress. So 51% of women reported feeling stressed compared to just 35% of men. And in 2016, a poll of 2,000 people found that women will spend on average 72 hours. That's the equivalent of 3 full days doing stuff for Christmas. So completing tasks like decorating the tree, Sorry, I've just got to admit a few people in. Hi, Amanda. Thank you for joining us. We're just going through some Christmas stats. Yep, I think she's just connecting to audio. Okay, so coming back to this, the poll found that on average, women do 72 hours of kind of extra work in the run up to Christmas. So that's the equivalent of 3 full days, completing tasks like decorating the tree, doing the pre-Christmas food shop, preparing, researching, preparing the food, researching, planning, buying and wrapping gifts, and then getting the children to write Christmas and thank you cards. In comparison, men took responsibility for only 9 jobs. And that included things like the outdoor lights, the glory of carving, but not necessarily cooking the turkey, and the fun of helping build the children's new Christmas toys as well. So definitely a gap there. And finally, a 2018 nationwide poll found that 62% of men find excuses to escape the Christmas festivities. So that's a luxury that women often don't get. And that came to an average of about 11 hours of time spent alone, either in the bedroom or the man cave, down at the pub with friends, or even in the toilet. So it turns out for many of us, Christmas is not just a season of joy, but more of stress, resentment, and conflict, at least in part, and especially if you're a woman. Okay, so we can't just blame the blokes. A lot of this stuff feels really self-imposed. We kind of almost kind of feel pressured to do it for some reason. And a lot of women kind of feel as if the success of the holidays comes down to them. And there's almost like a resistance to sharing that load. But why? So to understand this, let's take a look back at your childhoods. Is anyone willing to share kind of the memories of your Christmases past and to think a little bit about who did what? You can unmute and talk on video, or you can kind of put something in the chat if you prefer. We've got another person as well. Nina's just arrived. Anyone want to think about their Christmases and who did what? So was there a person who took charge in the kitchen, or someone who kind of bought all the presents?
I'm happy to chip in on that, Sharmila.
Okay.
So for me, I think my mum probably did like everything in the run up to Christmas, but I always remember my dad was always in charge of Christmas dinner, and he was like very proud of this. And it was like the kitchen was his domain on Christmas Day because he saw that as like mum needed a break, and
His
that was kind of his
contribution.
gift to her, which was very sweet. But I think maybe like he used that as justification for not doing anything in the kitchen for the rest of the year as well.
Oh. And did she get to rest while he was making the?
Yeah, he very much
Yeah.
like put a glass of bubbles in her hand, and she did
Oh,
something.
lovely.
Yeah, so it worked quite well on Christmas Day. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Amanda's just said, Mum did Christmas present shopping and wrapping and dinner. Dad did lights and tree. Okay. Nina, I know you've just joined us. We're just talking about Christmases past and kind of Christmases that you had in your childhood and how the division of labour was when you were growing up in terms of who did what at Christmas. Okay, so maybe that's it. So let's kind of, oh, thanks. Doing bedtime, can't chip in, but listening. Great. Thank you, Nina. Okay, so let's move on. So as we can see, there's definitely kind of some gender divisions going on. And that's how those gendered societal expectations get passed down. Because despite our best intentions, without even realizing it, we all unconsciously tend to fall back on what feels familiar or what we learned from our role models, especially during times of stress. And it's not just what you saw in your own family, it's what you saw all around you. So, with other families, on TV, in books, in advertising, and now through social media, which has a whole extra level of Instagrammable peer pressure. And it gets reinforced into adulthood, right? So, what did you get rewarded for doing around Christmas, and what did you get not to do? Those are quite important questions to ask. And these expectations and pressures are really widespread. So while there are always household exceptions and we're moving in the right direction, men nowadays are definitely doing more than their fathers and their grandfathers. That shift at home hasn't happened quite as quickly as the shifts that have happened outside the home with women in work, for example. So whilst these systems adversely affect women more than men, what we fail to recognise is that it's not necessarily great for men either. There's alarming rates of male suicide, and we need to note kind of the overwhelming rates of men's violence, and how studies show that men who spend time in healthy relationships, who spend more time with their children in caring roles, are psychologically better off and live longer and happier lives generally. Okay. And so we keep passing these ways of being on, right? Unless we pause and we intentionally think about the life that we want to create. And that is where the fair play method can help. So fair play, for those who maybe aren't so familiar with it, is a simple card-based system, and it's been developed by Eve Rodsky, for divvying up housework. And what it allows you to do is to make the invisible labour of running a house and looking after children more visible. So it helps you to assign responsibility for tasks to individuals within the family, and it prevents confusion about who's doing what and when. But most importantly, by providing that transparency, collaboration, and structure, it also allows you to avoid getting sucked back into those societal expectations and pressures. So in the Fair Play deck, there are 100 cards, each one relating to a different housework or childcare task. But what's happened this year is that the Fair Play Institute have narrowed those down to the ones that are most relevant during the holiday season. And you'll get a free guide with printable cards after this workshop. So here are some of the biggies. So of course, let's start with the big man himself, Santa. And for those who want to, the little one, the elf on the shelf. So if you end up holding this card, it's up to you to spread the magic. And it's one of the toughest ones to execute because there's a lot of work that goes into it, but it's also one of the most rewarding. And then there's a seasonal decorations card. This is digging into the furthest reaches of your loft or your garage. It's really fun, but it's a necessary part of creating that festive vibe. And what does tidying up and organising mean? So it means different things to different people. Some people think it's just a little bit of straightening up. For other people, it's kind of like going through the whole house and giving it a whole refresh. So one person's definition of tidy isn't the same as another person. So it's worth talking about. And it's also worth thinking about kind of what the organising part involves. Is it about kind of getting rid of all the outgrown toys and clothes before the new ones roll in? And then we have the dishes, because at this time of year, not only is there the additional load of extra guests and more people, but you might be using kind of different dinnerware and glassware that's in operation. So it's definitely worth kind of thinking about how you're going to manage that. Hosting can also be a big card to hold. So Are you one of those people that loves the idea of throwing legendary bashes that are the talk of the town, or do you prefer to have a few close friends and family over? And the adult friendships card is one of the most important in the fair play system. And in Eve Rodsky's research, it was closely correlated with well-being. But at this time of year, how you carve out that time is really important because sometimes it can add to the stress. And the calendar keeper has their work cut out over the holiday season. How will you balance the needs of everyone in the family whilst also ensuring that you make time for doing nothing and for rest and relaxation? Groceries need attention every day of the year, but the holidays mean there's extra meal prep and planning, and you might need to know all the special dietary requirements of the guests that you're having over, and there might be special groceries as well that you want to prioritize and budget for. Okay. And then the gift card involves a huge amount of work, including lots of thinking and planning and researching. It involves kind of knowing what your family members value. And of course, multiple members can hold that card, as you can't really buy gifts for yourself, unless you want to, of course, in which case you totally can. So we've got the parents and in-laws card, and this is kind of thinking about kind of what kind of relationships your family is able to have. It can often be a source of joy, but it can also be a source of kind of conflict and sadness. So it's really important to discuss with your family about how you'll engage with these other people, else just the extended family. School breaks could be fun or stressful depending on what else you're juggling. If you're lucky enough to have holidays that coincide with your kids, how are you going to use it? Or is it more about organising the childcare and making sure you get your kids to and from with all the things that they need? And then finally, if you're lucky enough to be traveling over the holidays, there might be a lot to think about in terms of from the mode of transport to kind of budgets and to the packing and the unpacking. And also how will you balance those new adventures that you're going to have as a family with kind of making sure that you're seeing the family that you want to over Christmas? Okay. So those are the ones picked by the Fair Play team. And I think it's quite helpful to kind of think about, can you think of any others that come up for you when you think of Christmas? Obviously, there's the daily grind stuff like the meals and the laundry that continue throughout the year. And there's also the stuff like who's watching the kids while you're wrapping the presents. But can you think of any others that are specific to Christmas that come up for you? Scheduling the school shows, nativity concerts. Yep, that's a big one. Attending all of the above. Yep, that also takes up time and energy. Lots of Christmas parties at work. Plus the school winter fair. Yes, we've got a couple of those coming up since we have kids at two different schools. Yeah. Other ones that I thought of when I was looking through the cards were things like spirituality. For some people, Christmas is a religious affair. So thinking about how you incorporate spirituality might be something that's important to you. Christmas cards, yeah, and other traditions that each family will have, yeah. Teachers' collections, yeah. And the older children helping them with their own secret Santas for friends. Yeah, because somehow they'd never quite managed to do that on their own, do they, Sarah? The other one that I thought of was kind of the memories and the photographs. Like there's usually one person who's responsible for taking the photographs and making sure that they're all shared around the family. And your photo album, that sounds like it's quite a lot of work, Maeve and Greg. Okay, thank you. Oh, never been done a yearly aspiration. Great. Managing expectations if family dynamics are particularly difficult, although one of the cards alludes to this. Often this isn't discussed until conflict arises. Yes, you're right, Sarah. Okay, so as we can see, creating that holiday magic takes a lot of effort. And while every family has different ideas about what's fair, no one should be responsible for all of these cards all of the time. Okay, so now you've kind of made the invisible more visible. It's time to take a good hard look at kind of how you can kind of narrow down your list. So with fair play, less is more. So have a look at what you can take off your list. What's your why for including certain things? Why are those things important? Are you doing them for yourself, for tradition's sake, or to kind of keep other people sweet? Does it still hold value and meaning for you? And most importantly, is the cost in terms of your time, energy, money worth it? So take anything off the table that isn't relevant or doesn't bring you joy. So have a really good think about what you can say no to. And it's important to kind of think about how you agree on this as a family, or is there anything that you can kind of compromise and negotiate on for in terms of kind of what you include and what you don't include. And a good way to do this is to think of the task like baubles. So I don't know about you, but on our tree we have both kind of the kind of plastic baubles that kind of you can buy in most places. And then we occasionally get kind of given a lovely kind of ceramic ones to celebrate something like baby's first Christmas or something like that. And those ones are a bit more delicate. And so we kind of have to be careful where we put them. They're a bit of a pain actually, but a good way to think about these tasks is to think about which ones are plastic, which are the ones that you can drop and that they will bounce or they'll be okay, and which are the ones that are like glass or ceramic and will shatter. So you can use that as a visual to kind of think about what to keep on your task list and what to drop. Okay. So this one's called Prepare for Pushback, because as you get better at setting boundaries around your time and energy, be prepared for people to push back against it. So how will certain people in your social network cope with your new boundaries? Will you get the cold shoulder, or will you be told that you're being a bit of a Grinch? Think ahead to plan how you're going to handle that pushback without backing down on your values. Anyone have any experiences of that they're willing to share? No? Um, I think Secret Santa is often a good one because there's usually one person who kind of goes to the effort, don't they, to arrange the Secret Santa, and everyone just seems to go along with it. And then if that person then decides that they don't want to do it anymore, everyone's like, "Why? Why are you not doing it?" Um, so it's really important to kind of think about how you respond to that. Okay. And similarly, letting go of tasks might come with a phenomenal amount of guilt, either kind of guilt that you kind of feel for yourself, so that's self-imposed, or you might kind of feel guilty because of things that other people say or remark on. And a useful technique for that is to reframe the guilt from I feel guilty because whatever it is, to I've made the choice to do this because of. So clarifying your reasons may ease the guilt, but you might still find that because of the way that we've been raised, that there's some residual guilt there. And we've just had Joanne joining, so I'm just going to say hello, Joanne. So coming back to the guilt, so clarifying your reasons might ease your guilt, but there might be some guilt that you need to kind of just compassionately carry around with you and do what you need to anyway. Okay. So now you've finalised the task that you want to keep for your family, it's time to get down to the nitty-gritty. So get granular, or you run the risk of doubling up on your efforts or maybe unintentionally dropping some balls. So get specific about what's required for each of the tasks that you've decided are important to keep. So with the fair play method, what we suggest is that you assign a task to a member of the household to take full ownership of that task. So from the thinking about it to the planning to getting the job done. And then as a family, you would also kind of set really clear expectations and standards for what that task would look like. For example, if you're talking about Christmas dinner, you think really carefully about who's planning it. You can both provide input, but only one person takes the lead. You might agree on a menu based on the preferences of the family, who's attending. You kind of have to consider dietary restrictions, like who's a vegan this year, that sort of thing, and what your budget is. And you'd also establish a measure of accountability. So you might kind of say that all of the stuff for Christmas dinner needs to be purchased or ordered by a specific date. Okay. And then once you've kind of set up your tasks cards and who's doing what, the really important thing is to communicate regularly. So keep talking about what's working and what's not working. So you'd kind of set aside regular times to catch up. And then if something isn't working, what do you need to problem solve that together? Do some of you have some experience that you can share? But it would be done at a time that's separate. That you've set aside for that. And any big events, you might want to kind of use that time to kind of plan for those in a bit more detail. And with fair play, what we recommend is that actually it gets really, really tiring if you're holding a card for a really long time. So what fair play recommends is that you swap cards quite regularly. It depends on the card. So if you don't want to be the person who's doing the dishes for the whole of the holiday season, for example, so you might want to swap that task on a daily basis so that one day one person's doing it and the other day another person's doing it. But there might be other cards like the person who's kind of responsible for the family gifts that you can kind of swap annually. Okay, and I just wanted to touch briefly on emotional labour. So I kind of think of this as the final frontier because it can be one of the toughest ones to shift. And it's one that, as a family, we're still working on. So the definition of emotional labour is the act of thinking about and looking after the feelings and needs of others. And often that's kind of before you kind of get to think about your own. So at Christmas, that can look like, I think Sarah might have said this, attending to the feelings of other people, navigating complex family dynamics, managing young children's tantrums or the teen mood swings, generally just keeping everyone in that Christmas spirit. And my kind of advice for that is to kind of keep talking about it and go slowly, but keep talking about what it is, how it shows up in your family, and problem solve together about how to work on that. And if you aren't the person who usually does that for the family, think about how you can show up and skill up. Okay, Just a note on safeguarding. So when you start to challenge the norms in your family, your partner might respond in a way that you don't expect. That doesn't feel right or may even feel abusive. And if you do think that you're in immediate danger, it's really important that you call 999 and ask for assistance from the police. If you're not sure what's happening, you might want to kind of just talk that through with someone or get a bit more information. Please contact us at the Psychology Co-operative because we can kind of get that information to you. Okay. And so this is my summary. So in terms of fair play, with your Christmas list, task list, the important thing is to make the invisible visible. And then start to kind of just narrow down your list. Remember, less is more. Think about your values, think about what's meaningful for you, and kind of focus on those things most. Get granular. So really think about kind of who's assigning tasks to one person or another, and make sure that you kind of set kind of standards for what that would look like, and then communicate regularly. And my final tip is to make sure that you include yourself in something that brings you joy. So, as a final question for the holiday hustle part of the workshop, I just wanted to ask, if you could free up some time and energy for yourself this Christmas, what would you do that would bring you joy? Because your needs matter too, and it's really important to make sure that the holidays are magical for you. I love going to listen to carols, and I've also booked a lunch with two close friends. No kids. Brilliant. I'm not sure if that's Maeve or Greg, but Maeve. That sounds lovely. I'd be happy with popping out to the cinema one night. Also a good way to spend Christmas. Similar, seeing adult friends where we don't have to rush off to see to the children every 5 minutes. Yeah, that adult time is so important, isn't it? Okay, so that's it for the holiday hustle part of the workshop. So gender equity isn't just for Christmas. So if what you've heard has piqued your interest, then I'm going to suggest some ways that you can carry this learning forward into the new year. So obviously you can do it yourself with the fair play method. You can buy Eve Rodsky's book, which is widely available, or you can borrow it. And you can also find out about individual couple therapy through the cooperative to support you around this. There's lots of kind of really knowledgeable therapists at the cooperative who will be able to help you. But what I really want to take this last bit of our time together today to explain about is our exciting new course. And that's going to be released exclusively through the Psychology Co-operative, and it's called Rebalance the Load. And it's all about achieving fairness in your chores and your childcare all year round. Okay, so this is going to be a digital course that you can work through in your own time. So first of all, as part of the course, you'll get kind of a printable version of the 100 cards of fair play, so you don't have to buy the expensive box. You'll also get 8 hours of learning that's kind of taught, of recorded learning that will be put together by me. And there'll be lots of additional questionnaires and handouts to help you to think about what that involves. Okay, So the first session will be about understanding unpaid labour and how inequity in the home impacts well-being and wider society. And within that, there'll be a bonus section about how to invite your partner into thinking about tackling these inequalities with you. In session 2, you'll be learning about how nature and nurture play into gender roles and how structural systems like the patriarchy and capitalism maintain inequities in the home. So we'll kind of be doing a bit of a deep dive into that. We'll also be thinking about why it's important to think about how we reimagine what that looks like. Just like we did a little bit of today, session 3 will be taking a look at kind of your individual and your family values, as well as what to do when maybe your values conflict and you disagree. And in session 4, we'll be introducing you to the 100 cards of fair play. We'll talk about the different suites and also look at some of the daily grind tasks, such as kind of the dishes and the never-ending laundry. And then we'll kind of introduce the idea of the magic trio. So these are one of the cards, which is the adult relationships that we talked about at Christmas, is part of the magic trio alongside self-care, and the other one is unicorn space, which is kind of time for individual kind of hobbies and activities that make you uniquely you, that you get really passionate about. So that's called the magic trio, and it's seen as the pinnacle of every adult's happiness. So in session 5, once you've divvied up your cards, we'll look at how you can kind of build more ownership of your cards with conception, planning, and execution. And then we'll also talk about how you can build trust in your relationship with each other by learning how to set mutually agreed minimum standards for the tasks. And then we'll move on to the maintenance part of fair play, which is about how you can make regular check-ins a part of your lifestyle, because that's kind of how you keep the gender equity going. And then in the Communication 101 session, I'll share what I've learned about communication from fair play, but also from my work as a psychologist. We'll look at how you can effectively communicate about household chores, especially when you're giving feedback, and how to navigate setting boundaries when you need to. And in this final session, it'll be a chance to consolidate everything that you've learned. We'll talk about common blocks and how to solve them. I'll share some top tips, and we'll also talk about how to take gender equity further outside of your home. So, how much for all this great stuff? So the usual price will be 150, but as a thank you for listening today, and a special festive gift, we're providing you with a special discount. So the course is up and ready to start from the 1st of January, but it's ready to buy from now. So it could be the Christmas gift that keeps on giving. So sounds like a whole lot of work. Why should I invest? Well, as someone who has kids, I care deeply about what I role model for them, and I suspect you do too. So it's something that I think that we all should be working on, and it's something that I continue to work on in my own life. I don't know about you as well, but sometimes when I look at what's happening in the world, it's really hard not to feel hopeless. And then I think about this thing called spheres of influence. So most of us don't have a lot of power to change all the big things that are happening out there in the world. Our greatest influences lie within ourselves and with those nearest and dearest to us. So that's where we hold that power to change, if we're willing and open. Okay, so we don't have very long left, but I was hoping if anyone wants to contribute any questions or thoughts. Oh, I think Rob's just said, yeah, sorry, that was from earlier. Any questions or thoughts? that I can try to answer in the last kind of 9 minutes or so that we have together.
Hi, Sharmila. It's Maeve. This isn't so much a question, just a reflection, just to say thank you for taking us through the fair play method. It's certainly sparked for us just how much work there is to fit in between now and the 25th.
Yeah.
But also just really interesting that you've like quantified through some of the research at the beginning just how many, it's like sort of 2 weeks of full-time work from some of that data, which is good to be mindful of that as you make your choices and you decide whether an annual photo album really is a good choice or not.
Who are you doing that for, I guess, and what is it taking away from is always a really good question.
Something we've really always found hard to navigate is as being sort of generally conflict avoidant people, how to balance the needs of your own new family, the family where you're the parents and you're raising the children, with the very loving but extended family. And so it was really interesting to hear your thoughts there about kind of being prepared to know that when you set those boundaries that it's not going to please everyone, and to think through in advance how to manage that. So that was really useful. Thank you.
And I think having those conversations in advance means that you're then approaching those situations as a team because it's already pre-agreed and pre-thought about.
Yeah. Thank you.
No problem. Sorry, I missed the start. No questions. Just thank you for putting this on and giving space to reflect. I had not heard of the fair play method, and it feels like a really useful tool to use to navigate some difficult conversations. Sorry if I missed this, but does the course talk much about financial balance in relationships? One person being part-time at work to look after the children and the impact of this. Absolutely. So a big part of the fair play method is that all time is valuable. So it doesn't matter how much you earn, or how many hours you work. It's about kind of valuing time. We all only have 24 hours in a day, and it's thinking very carefully about how you use that time. And also kind of our I suppose elevation of kind of paid labor compared to unpaid labor, which is just as important for society.
Hi, Sharmila.
Hey, Sarah.
Sorry, can't actually see me in this bad light. Thank you so much for putting this on. I think I was just going to reflect and as an observation, especially doing a lot of work with couples, in terms of how important and transformative these conversations can be if you start to kind of name some of these things, because often they can really feed into kind of resentments that can chip away at a relationship as well. And if you think about the kind of the couple relationship and the desire from both partners to really be seen and understood and appreciated and validated, it's vital. So actually making these, even starting to consider doing things slightly differently, or space to have these conversations, can really have a trickle down effect, and it can dissipate like resentment and kind of almost like bridge a gap and kind of create connection. So these things are so important.
Absolutely. And I think the fact that it's so structured and clear about who's doing what, and you've agreed that together, means that actually it takes away a lot of that kind of ambiguity and that kind of, it just provides kind of a system that kind of helps with all of that kind of unspoken stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. There was just one reflection on the managing expectations. I was curious to know, I think you probably answer that in terms of like setting standards, but quite often what can be difficult is if a task is handed over and then the other person needs to trust that that person is going to do it, might be slightly differently, they might execute it slightly
Yeah.
differently, and so therefore that then can kind of feed back into kind of not feeling it enough or it's right enough. And I guess
Yeah,
that then
and
kind of,
that's where that, I suppose, that minimum standard comes in,
yeah,
where you've agreed. So the idea isn't that one person has to kind of do lots more to, or kind of like do it a particular person's way, the other person's way. It's that
yeah,
actually within the minimum standard, you can kind of do it however you like. So it allows you that freedom to kind of do it
yeah.
your own way,
Okay,
but
brilliant.
also kind of do it in a way that builds trust.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
So Rob's just said, thank you very much for your time. The Fair Play method looks really interesting, and your comments on the emotional labour were also really useful. Well, thank you, Rob, for coming. Okay. So, I think we've kind of run out of time now, but thank you very much. If you've got any, sorry, have you got a sense of how much time you think is needed to have the initial Fair Play Christmas conversation from experience? The deck of cards has always put us off. Yeah, you don't have to kind of include all of them. So maybe just start with one. So if there's a particular one that you feel like you always end up doing, but that you'd quite like to share, maybe start with one and kind of work your way up. So start where you are and kind of work your way up. Maeve and Greg, thank you. So thanks for listening. I guess all that's left to say is wishing you all a really fabulous holiday season. And I hope that you'll kind of think about this a bit more and hopefully think about kind of whether the course is right for you as well. All right. Thank you. And Joanne's just said thank you for the helpful insights into an overwhelming conversation. Yes, it can be. And I think that's why this is having kind of this method really helps. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being part of the conversation.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. I think it's just us.
Yeah, brilliant. Well done. That was so clear. It was
Oh,
brilliant.
really? Thank
Really,
you. I wasn't sure if it was or it wasn't. I've just looked at it so many times, and you know, when you kind of think I've looked at it too many times now.
no, it's really, really helpful. And I think, do you know what, for so many people, just the fact, and it was great to see some partners on together,
Yes,
but
it was, wasn't it?
really, just even if it's just getting started on a conversation and just like having kind of almost like a kind of a card in front of you or a
Yeah,
question takes it away from it being like
a
problem. It's like,
blame
yeah,
or
totally, really, really interesting. I learned a
yeah.
lot as well. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I was a bit scared at the beginning when I thought it was just going to be you and me.
Gosh, oh God, it does.
Oh my God, I'm still recording as well. Oh, I'm sure I can cut this bit out.